Welcome to the 389th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thank you for listening. Well, the humidity has made its way to Florida, so we're springing into summer very quickly. May gives us a few days of humidity, a few days of lesser humidity, and then we get full-bore humidity until December. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to it, but after that, it's all good. Just heat training. So I've got a little talk about hydration and heat training a little later on. I'd like to send out kudos, congratulations to Erica, a member of our practice who ran the half marathon, the Stewart half marathon. She just finished a 10K and set a personal best. And as well as Cindy, another member of the practice, came back and ran her first 5K after a long period of time and set a personal record. So the cardiology plant-based wellness practice is going strong, and people are continuing to run into the summer and the spring. So we got several people training for the Stewart Marathon next spring in March. If you want to follow some of the training, you can go over to Facebook. There's a page, Plant-Based Riders and Plant-Based Striders, and you can join that group. There's you don't have to be a member of the practice, but you can log some training with us and show us where you run. It's always good to have additional motivation, and we post some pictures of food as well along the way. I think it's really important for runners. Anytime I listen to a podcast and hear ultra runners or distance runners or people that are improving, after they get their running technique and they get their cardiovascular system in shape, it's all about nutrition. And, wish I would have had my nutrition better. I can't wait to get my nutrition better. Myself included. I think a lot of people when they're young, they get away with a lot, eating sweets and junk food. But as you get older, you recover better if you're eating well. So plant-based nutrition is a vital role in running, into your later years of life. So you might get away with it early. I'm going to say you don't, because I'm going to say that you've kind of ruined your peak if you're running now on junk food. I think you could run better. I don't care who you are. But you might not get sick, and you might think you recover okay. But certainly as we get older, we're not running just to run. We're running to mitigate lifestyle diseases, improve cardiovascular fitness. So there's no real reason to clog your arteries while you're running. And you can't outrun a bad diet. Just no way. I think if you're in shape and you have good body mass and you have a lot of, have muscle, you can get away with more longer, but you can't outrun a bad diet. And certainly people, there's certain people that the bad nutrition is a lot faster to take over than others. So with nutrition and calories being on the forefront, there was an article this week posted in the Journal of American College of Cardiology in the cardio-oncology session. And that says something right there. The fact that we have to have a cardiology-oncology joint paper kind of tells you that a lot of what happens in the oncology world sets people up for cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer. So it's nice, I guess, to see cardiology oncology, because we're not pigeonholing people into either just having breast cancer or heart disease. Typically, the age when cancer starts, so lifestyle disease, is the age when cardiovascular disease starts. But often the drugs that are used to treat cancers, and specifically breast cancer, have a cardiotoxic effect and can put people into heart failure, can cause cardiomyopathy or weakening of the heart muscle that is permanent. Can also cause cardiovascular disease, and certainly radiation can cause coronary artery disease. And in particular, this study looked at women who had been given chemotherapy and looked at time-restricted feeding to see whether or not their body mass index improvement, decreased fat mass, led to a better outcome. So these women were older than 60. They had some cardiovascular risk factors. Typically, their body mass index was greater than 25. and they had received a cardiotoxic treatment, typically anthracyclines, which is a typical chemotherapy given to breast cancer patients for 1 to 6 years. If they had diabetes, they were excluded from the study. So I think it's interesting right away. They call it time-restricted feeding as opposed to intermittent fasting, because all that gets muddied, as we've talked before, of what constitutes fasting. And they asked them not to eat anything, they asked them to eat between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. And they looked then at outcomes such as their glucose, total cholesterol, HDL or good cholesterol, blood pressure, waist circumference. They did MRIs to look at the fat mass intra-abdominally, called the visceral fat mass, fat around your organs. They looked at whole body fat mass using a bioelectric method. And the interesting part is they invited 228 people to the study, and only 22 said yes. And of those 22, most of them had a body mass index greater than 25. Most of them were older than 60. The average age was 66, and the average body mass index was 31. Most of them had taken the chemo for, it was about 3 years after they had taken chemo. 50% of the people had received radiation. 91% of them were on tamoxifen. They didn't ask them to change their diet in any way. They just asked them to only eat between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. And when they looked at the fat mass, there was somewhat of a decrease. The body mass index didn't decrease. But overall, it was felt to be a positive effect because, again, there was a visceral fat decrease, and visceral fat is associated with a poor outcome in breast cancer because fat makes hormones and a lot of other growth factors and increases inflammation. So all of those factors increase the risk of breast cancer recurrence, not to mention increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Certainly the study was limited by only following up people 8 weeks, but again, they did show some decrease in fat mass, which is a positive outcome. One of the things that they did do, and I feel is the most important, is they had follow-up calls. So they had a call from a dietitian in the beginning, and then they had a call from staff members at week 1, 3, and 6. And then they had twice daily automatic text messages asking them to respond with the time the day they started and stopped eating. And phone calls also involved discussion of adherence, symptoms, how things were actually going. And adherence was, determined whether the participants actually responded to the calls. And the reality of it is most of the people did respond to the calls. And I think that's the biggest success to this study, was that there was, it wasn't just people who said, okay, eat between the hours of 12 and 8, and then we'll check in with you in 8 weeks. With those, certainly a call, but I think even more importantly, with a text message that they needed to respond to, there was a high degree of accountability that they were going to restrict when they ate to the hours that they said in the study. And obviously, anybody that participates in the study kind of wants to do the study. So, there's a bias towards success, but I believe that it was, helped a lot by having people call in and have the text messages because, again, accountability. 12 to 8, that's 8 hours, 8-hour window of eating. It's not much different than if you got up at 8 and you ate to 6. So 2 hours, I don't think makes or breaks, when we say time-restricted eating. I think the interesting thing of picking a time between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. was that they overlapped a typical snack period. So for these people, they had some mindfulness that they weren't going to start eating until lunchtime. But they also had a mindfulness that they were going to be going into the evening hours and have text message. And so they were I would guess they were less likely to start in the snacking that would typically occur if people ate the general time periods. And that most likely accounted in my mind, for the loss of a little fat mass, but again, not enough to show a BMI difference in the 8 weeks, because again, nobody told them what to eat, just, to eat between these hours. And there have been several studies recently in other patient or just general patient populations. There was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that had 139 people, only 118 completed what they would call an intermittent fast, eating between the hours of 8 to 4 p.m. And again, no body weight change, no real changes in that. And most of the studies that have come about lately that have really looked at time-restricted eating haven't shown any benefit to overall weight loss or change. And I kind of go back to real-world participation. So just like Weight Watchers or any other dietary method, if you perceive it as being a short duration event, a study, I want to lose 30 or 40 pounds, I can do anything for a short period of time, then you can, get these hours, these different hours of feeding in, cut off a couple hours of eating or change the time period. But real world, people go to work, people come home, people have to, socialize, eat dinner together. I think that makes that much, much more difficult. I think that in some respects, time-restricted eating, if, also you're going to, put a fence around what you're going to eat in that period of time. Obviously, junk food or high-calorie, high-dense foods or keto foods during that time is ultimately not going to get anybody anywhere. And it all, ultimately comes down to any of these programs as far as weight loss, it's energy consumed. And, your body sees energy as energy, and too much restriction will slow things down. But where the calories come from, as far as energy goes and weight loss, doesn't really matter that much. I think adherence is, where it comes to. And then we talk nutrition, we're talking about the health of something. So, if you ate 1,200 calories of Twinkies a day, you would lose weight, but would you be healthy? No. If you ate 1,200 calories of brightly colored fruits and vegetables, then obviously now you're adding to your health as well as decreasing your caloric intake and ultimately losing weight. And I'm not suggesting 1,200 calories. I just brought that up as far as a number. That was the old time registered dietitian diet that everybody was put on, a 1,200 calorie diet. Everybody thought they stuck to it. Most people thought they did less. Most people didn't lose weight. Therefore, they didn't restrict to 1,200 calories. It basically comes down to what people actually consume and what they're aware of. And that's what makes dietary questionnaires so inaccurate, because, you can't come up with how many calories that you truly eat. If you were eating 4 apples and 2 potatoes and, a can of beans, you could, but if you're eating something with a sauce and different ways things are prepared, oil, how you cook them, it adds a lot of calories. And so that's where it becomes very inaccurate. Most people don't realize, that nuts and seeds add a lot of calories to foods. Cooking with oil adds, 500 to 800 calories a day to foods. Nobody counts those things. People don't count what they're standing up and eating. They only count, if they happen to sit down. So, a lot of people will tell me that they intermittently fast, but what that means is they don't eat that. They may eat 2 meals where they're actually sitting down with the plate, but they snack all day through it. So they're basically grazing with intermittent meals, which typically doesn't work out. The best success we've had in our practice by far are those people that have a texting dialogue with me or a frequent check-in. And it's really about the texting dialogue. My diabetics that want to get off of insulin and normalize their body mass index text me every morning with the blood glucose of that morning and the glucose of the evening before. And so there's an accountability to do that. But we also use that to look back as feedback and say, what did you consume the day before? What threw you off today versus yesterday? And we also use those numbers to decrease their insulin until we get them off of insulin, because The last thing we want is somebody having high numbers, but more importantly, we don't want people to become hypoglycemic. And you never really know exactly how somebody's going to respond until we get those numbers. So if people are eating a really bad diet and then they go over to a really good plant-based diet, those numbers kind of fall down pretty quickly. Typically, they occur, glucose readings and weight occur in a stair-step type fashion. So there'll be, a plateau, and then they'll have a drop in their morning glucose and their evening glucose, and then they'll have a plateau, and then they'll have a drop in their morning and evening glucose. And as they lose weight and refine their diet, those number drops aren't quite as quick. And, you have to be patient, but that's where the feedback and encouragement comes in, and, where we really get success. People that do it on their own or say, I got this, typically don't have as much success. The other thing that I've seen that people don't have any success with is the glucose monitors. Now some of the companies are saying, and you can see them online, people wearing 24-hour-a-day glucose monitors that download to an app, and I believe the company will give you 7 to 14 days, depending on your insurance free, and then you have to buy it, and they're very expensive. But people don't look at them. Their doctors don't look at them, and they don't look at them. So they have this wonderful glucose reading coming into their app, but they don't know what to do with it, and their doctors don't look at it until 2 or 3 weeks later. And so how does it help? It helps the company that makes the glucose monitor, but that's about it. Titrating insulin or titrating meds, as traditional endocrinologists do, in the rears that far without any feedback, it's basically titrating insulin up, not down. Very few people ever go down on their insulin that way. So, I'm a huge proponent of normalizing body mass index to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease and decrease your risk of cancer progression or return, or, cancer, to decrease your risk of cancer in general. But I think that you need to work with someone that allows you to work your nutrition around your lifestyle. So if you're somebody that goes to work, or you're somebody that travels to work, you have to eat in the cafeteria, you have to take your lunch, you travel. Those are things that really get in people's way as far as long-term maintenance of gains that they make while changing their nutrition. And of course, plant-based nutrition is by far the way to go in my eyes. So with that being said, today on Twitter I'm always kind of looking for something to talk about in the podcast, and sometimes, it seems like I'm a little low on information, but then all of a sudden, right before I get ready to start getting things ready, something comes up. But today on Twitter, there was this giant argument/discussion because the governor a representative from Massachusetts, James McGovern, made a statement that they would like to have an improved nutritional training for all medical schools. And he went on to say that, medical students only get 19 hours of training in nutrition throughout their medical career. And there's a big diet health correlation, and we've got to do something to change things. Like, hallelujah. I thought everybody would be so excited. Yes, we need to drive it home that nutrition is the key to health. All this other stuff is ancillary, and we could decrease medications and decrease procedures and decrease hospitalizations by just changing people's nutrition. What would that do to the economy? Decreasing hospitalizations, decreasing procedures, decreasing pharmaceutical prescriptions. How could that, no, we can't do that. But nevertheless, he must have made a pharmaceutical lobbyist mad or something. But anyway, that's what he proposed, which I think is a great idea. But where would you put it in the curriculum? The funny part about it, everybody jumped on board that's not, that doctors shouldn't get involved in nutrition, and you should leave it to the registered dietitian, and they should teach doctors how to refer to registered dietitians, and they should really stay out of it, and doctors don't know anything about nutrition, and, they should just stay in their pigeonhole of prescribing medications and doing procedures. And I guess, to some degree, that's probably has a little validity, because where would you put this nutritional education treatment in training? Because we are owned by the pharmaceutical companies and we make our money doing procedures. And so if you taught me a bunch of nutrition, then obviously the people going into medical school would markedly go down, and nobody wanted to practice medicine, and on and on and on, because just helping people through diet and nutrition is, just boring. And how could you attract anybody? But all in all, again, it is a reality of where would you add the extra nutritional training in? It has to start somewhere. It would be nice if we started even just with university hospital cafeterias and started to incorporate better nutrition in the dietetics department. The people that got all bent out of shape over this comment were registered dietitians. And I think it's funny, because again, obviously Addie Dulaney Meinerich is a registered dietitian, and some of my best friends are registered dietitians, but they don't work in hospitals. And the hospitals are owned by the food service companies. And the dietetic departments are owned by the food service companies, down to the point of how the food nutrients are calculated, what food comes into the hospital, what menus are available, what they give to patients, and the time they're allowed with patients, and what they have to work with. So dietitians in hospitals are truly limited by the hospital. And if you're owned by the hospital that is trying to keep costs down as far as giving food to people, and trying to increase revenue by procedures and billing codes, then they're not going to be real supportive of real marked dietary changes either. And, there's this make the patient happy by giving them Salisbury steak and red Jell-O. So that's really not going to happen. So, and outpatient wise, well, there's plenty of opportunities for registered dietitians to hang out their own shingle and practice. They're limited by their accreditation a little bit. And how do they get patients? Unfortunately, the way insurances are structured, Medicare, traditional insurances only cover very short visits for things like diabetes and kidney failure, and perhaps post-op state in some severe malnutrition, and then some newborn type of services. But there's not a lot of reimbursement to support a registered dietitian in an outpatient setting. Ideally, in our practice, I am very proud to say that I'm a full-time registered dietitian. But we don't bill insurance. If part of our membership practice, our membership fee includes the ability to have contact with a registered dietitian for as much as you need. Our registered dietitian just happens to also be an exercise physiologist, so she wears more than one hat, and helps design programs down that line as well, and for our wellness practice and wellness challenges. But that works out well because we can tag team people. As a physician, again, if I don't walk the walk, how can I expect somebody else to walk the walk? So if I'm not healthy and I'm not eating a plant-based diet, referring somebody to my registered dietitian to get, I guess if you refer it out, I can ignore it, and she can take care of things, or he can take care of things. But the reality of it is, everything works better with the united front. And, I believe we do take a lot of biochemistry, and we know a lot of biochemical pathways. We learn that in medical school. We just don't apply them to food groups and learn about that. On the other hand, in the training of the dietetics training, those programs are often funded very heavily by the dairy industry and other food industries that, again, direct curriculum and programs. So the reality of it is there are very few plant-based registered dietitians. And most registered dietitians cringe at the idea of being plant-based, that we're going to miss out on some nutrient because they've been brainwashed by the dairy industry and so forth. And of course, they want to eat what they want to eat. And as a group, they're pretty nice people. And they really don't want to, it's hard if you meet somebody for 15 minutes to really tell them that they need to, change everything you've learned your whole life is wrong and you need to do it this way. It's almost impossible. I think it's really a good suggestion that the representatives say, yeah, we need more nutrition education in medical schools, but we need a lot more than education. We need to do implementation and look at what kind of food the hospitals are providing. The nursing staff in hospitals are almost all overweight. There's a high degree of obesity because of the food that's available, the junk food, the takeout. So if people aren't setting a good example all through the healthcare inpatient, outpatient setting, then how are you going to say, well, you just happen to have heart disease, so you have to eat this way? So, I was kind of surprised that the registered dietitians that made comments, and again, it was limited, to a few people, but most people got all bent out of shape that, they didn't want the doctor taking over, nutrition in the practice of medicine. Unfortunately, that's the only way we're going to get around this when we start figuring out that we need to take care of people and change their nutrition and figure out how to get them off of these medications and actually start looking at some of these medications and realizing just how little they do. And until we do that as physicians, we're not going to make it anywhere. And a physician and a registered dietitian need to work together in order to get people off the medications. If for some strange reason, there's a plant-based dietitian and she gets these people on a great diet, but the doctor's only seeing the patient every once in a while and doesn't change the medications or afraid to change the medication because they don't know the benefits of nutrition, then you get these people with low blood pressures and low sugars, and they're walking around like zombies because they changed their diet, but now they're actually feel worse than they did before with all the medications they're on. So it's not quite as simple as what the representative, who didn't look all that healthy, was asking for. But I thought it was a nice step in the right direction, saying, hey, we ought to think about changing things, a little bit. The next study I was going to look at was looking at risk factors for an acute myocardial infarction in young adults. You heard it, young adults, 18 to 55. And which risk factors were worse in women, which risk factors were worse in men, and should we target people any differently? And they used the NHANE data. They actually looked at 2,264 patients, and they actually used controls, 2,264 controlled, that didn't have heart disease or didn't have heart attacks. And they looked at 7 risk factors: depression, diabetes, hypertension, smoking, family history, low income, hyperlipidemia. And what they noted was that diabetes was a bigger risk factor, more prevalent in women, as well as depression and hypertension. And, what struck me with this is, yep, these risk factors are bad, and young people are having acute myocardial infarctions. But these are the people that think that they're bulletproof, 18 to 55 years of age. Young women tend to have more plaques, so you can't pick them up with a stress test. So if we took everybody at 20 and decided to do a stress test on them, we're not going to pick up those soft plaques because they're not hemodynamically significant until they rupture. But, I was kind of blown away that it was that easy to find people in this young category and looking at the risk factors. Typically women present later and with a bigger heart attack. Again, they ignore the symptoms. If you look at women, there is some protection before menopause for cardiovascular disease, but if you're a diabetic or smoke, it's those protections are gone. So in the span of my practice, when I think the youngest person I've ever seen have a bypass that was a woman was 30 years old, and she was a diabetic that smoked. So certainly diabetes is a huge risk factor, and with the increased obesity in the population, that really is dialing back the age of first heart attacks to a much younger age group, and we just don't think about it. When young people kill over from a heart attack or have a big one, we just don't think that's something that occurs, but it does occur. And the number of people that don't seek medical attention, don't have regular evaluations, meaning, simple blood pressure screen, a body mass index screen, lipid level, glucose evaluation, is pretty rare in a young age group. A lot of people don't have insurance, so they don't go to the doctor. They don't want to pay for the blood test. I will tell you that if you do not have insurance, you can go online and have labs drawn at Quest and pay a draw fee and get a pretty good cash price. Ultra is one of the companies that we use for people that don't have insurance. So there's ways to get your blood work checked. I know there are, now doc in the box, blood, do your own healthcare things out there. Not quite that easy to get those things. There'll be a doctor that'll interpret things. But again, what do you do with the information? I know people that have ordered a bunch of blood tests on themselves that have just wasted their money because they order things that they don't need. But there's these packages out there that the companies, the independent labs say that, you need, but you really don't need. So, working with a healthcare professional does get you the right test order, hopefully, most of the time. But you really only need a few tests in a young population to see where we're going. And again, if you just look at physical characteristics of people, you go in, stick your arm in a blood pressure machine at CVS or Walgreens, and you get on the scale, you're well on your way to seeing whether or not you're at risk or not. Because if you flunk those two tests, chances are the diabetes and the high cholesterol not far behind it if they're not already there. And to think they won't grab you until you're 65 or 70, you're missing the boat. So, I think this study is important in that it shows that people can get sick at any age, and people are getting sicker at younger ages because of what we're eating out there. I wanted to leave you with a couple quick tidbits for the evening. First of all, a quick dinner recipe at our grocery store, Publix here in Florida, but a lot of grocery store has dried bean soup in a bag. So they have 15 bean soup already in the bag with a seasoning packet. That seasoning packet is not bad. Soak the beans during the day, put them in your Instapot. You can add a leek or an onion, a little tomato paste, a little lemon juice, some pepper and garlic in there as well for a little extra spice. And maybe a little bit of pasta at the end. Put that with it. Have bean soup with some small noodles or without the noodles, and a salad. Great dinner. That's what we had tonight. It was delicious. The other thing I wanted to just mention was sugarcane. And how I came about sugarcane was, it's like, why would she talk about sugar? Isn't sugar bad? Sugar's sucrose. But in Florida, we grow sugarcane, and you can actually grow it down where I live in Southwest Florida. And I actually went over to a friend's farm to get some bananas that he was harvesting. He has some banana trees, Namwa bananas. If you haven't had different varieties of bananas besides the Publix regular old bananas, I'd encourage you to try. But very thin skin. The reason why I can't get them, many places is that they don't transport well. The commercial bananas that we have now have a thick skin, so they can be hauled and trained and bussed and tracked and all those other kind of things. But I went over to his farm to get some Namwa bananas, and as I was talking to him a little bit, he said he opened a freezer and he said, showed me his sugarcane juice that he had frozen. He said, "You want to try?" And I was like, I don't want to try. I think I don't need any sugar. And I said, "Well, what do you do with it?" And he said, "Well, we drink it with lime juice." It's like, huh. And it's like, okay, I'll try. It's hot and humid down here. I'm thinking, well, maybe after, a long run, a little glass of sugarcane juice with some lime might not be a bad thing. And keep it under wraps, hydration, restoring my glycogen stores. But when I looked up, what are the health benefits of any of sugarcane? And, sugarcane is a plant, kind of looks like bamboo, but the leaves and stalks actually have a lot of antioxidants and phytosteroids and phenolic acid. There's some diuretic properties to the sugarcane juice, anti-inflammatory, analgesic. And they've been used in India a lot to treat bladder symptoms, urinary tract infections, cystitis. They've been used to treat jaundice and liver failure. So, there actually is some benefit to the sugarcane juice, although it is very high calorie, high energy, so it's not something that you would want to drink on a regular basis, but it's not, your mother's table sugar that we're looking at. To get to table sugar requires condensation and a lot of processing to get to that point. However, brown sugar and molasses that come from sugarcane, again, can retain some of those health benefits, in this unrefined form. So sugarcane juice is 70 to 75% water. It's 15% sucrose, 13 to 15%, and also has 10 to 15% fiber. So it's not near as bad as it sounds. I thought that was pretty cool. So this weekend after my long run, I'm going to actually try a little sugarcane juice with lime, which brings me a little bit to hydration. I've always told everyone, drink to thirst, drink to thirst, drink to thirst. And after our 50 miler and our little, electrolyte abnormalities in Michael, we decided to start experimenting with some electrolyte replacement drinks during long runs. I don't think if you're going out for an hour, water is perfectly fine. I think, say you're out at the beach or, out for a long time and you're eating food, I don't think you have to worry about any kind of electrolyte drink. Certainly in your day-to-day life, I would not worry about electrolyte drink. The only thing that Gatorade or something like that has to do is to make you more thirsty and sugar and calories that you don't need. But if you're going on a long run or an endurance run or you're out, more than an hour, with heavy exertion, heavy sweating, cutting down sugar cane or doing a heavy yard work, I think that there probably is some role for an electrolyte drink that is relatively low in sugar for the most part, depending on what you're doing. Again, if you're trying to get your calories from liquid, we tried an electrolyte drink called Tailwind last weekend and one called Gnarly. I found that I can't really get enough fluid in me to get the calories I need, so I probably would have to do some combination or make it concentrated and do some water. I'm not, haven't got it figured out that much, but, too much fluid, too much free water can cause a problem, a bad thing called hyponatremia. So for the most part, you're better off being dehydrated during an activity than overhydrated. The risk of hyponatremia and sudden death from brainstem herniation is a real thing with hyponatremia, which means excess water. So if you were going to be out and you keep pumping excessive amounts of water and it's a cool day, you could get into trouble with over water intoxication, so to speak. So drinking to thirst is still probably the best thing. If you're out for extended periods of time, then some electrolyte replacement. A lot of people used to weigh yourself before and weigh yourself after, and you really shouldn't lose a tremendous amount of weight after a long run. If somebody's losing, 3 or 4 pounds, 5 pounds, there's a lot of water weight loss that, you may not be fully hydrated. It's a bit of a individual decision. I will tell you that being chronically dehydrated, your tissues aren't getting the fluid that they need. So you should be peeing clear. You should listen to your body when you feel thirsty. And you should make a point to drink hydrating liquids. If you're watching your weight, then things with added sugar are not going to be into your best interest. Drinking a lot of coffee and tea that are somewhat diuretics is not going to be in your good interest. So for the most part, water, coconut water, not coconut milk are good things to hydrate with. And some green tea. I mean, you can mix it up. You can certainly have some coffee, but that shouldn't be your only thing. You can also get a fair amount of hydration from fruits and leafy green vegetables, raw vegetables. So, that goes into your hydration as well. I still like a big bowl of fruit in the morning after I run. Watermelon's in season. Watermelon, a lot of hydration to that. So, fresh fruit and berries is a good way to get some hydration as well. So, I don't know if that was clarifying or confusing, but that's kind of the way I do it. I think I'm going to cut it off there for today, but I'd like to thank you for listening, and take your health serious. Eat a colorful plate, and drink to thirst. Talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.